Hello and welcome to this episode of Hospitality Talks. And I am absolutely over the moon to be joined by Aideen McDonagh, who is the COO of White Rabbit Projects and the MD of Lina Stores. That's a rather big remit. Aideen, welcome. For anyone that
Thank
doesn't know
you.
you, doesn't know White Rabbit, doesn't know Lina Stores, do you want to do just a brief introduction?
Sure. Yeah, as you mentioned, Katy McDonagh. So I've been in London since 2006. Started off my career in Ireland and moved to the States. I lived there for 6 years, moving to London in 2006, as mentioned. Headed up hospitality for Harvey Nichols group for quite some time. Leaned into the world of international catering and ended up at White Rabbit towards the beginning. So if you don't know White Rabbit, it's a hospitality incubator which invests in early stage startups and helps them to grow. So we have Lina Stores and Cricket as part of our portfolio. We exited Island Poke earlier on this year. And just coming out of COVID, we also started to work with landlords and hoteliers on a project called White Rabbit Hospitality, is where we design, develop, and operate hotels on behalf of those hoteliers. And at the moment, we have about 6 hotels across the UK. So Oxford, Cambridge, Scotland, and a really big property in Lisbon, which we operate with Chef Nuno Mendes.
Now, that's the one that I want to get to next, is that one. So I wonder if I can expense that. So that's the one I want to get to. But I have, very personal experiences of Lena Stores specifically. One of my favorite places is where we had the Cam Christmas party this year.
Where
Um,
you were dancing on tables earlier this week, wasn't it?
we were not dancing on table. Oh, you are. Um, so no, we were not dancing on tables. We had an early night, but as always, the service was fantastic. The food is absolutely fantastic. Even the buildings that you choose and how, the decor is fantastic. How do you get it so right with Lena Stores? How do you speak to your customers? Where do you get the inspiration from?
We have a great team, a small team, but a very great team. And the building that you're referring to that you were in earlier this week was an old NatWest bank, and it
Yeah.
had been empty for quite some time, and we were so lucky to find it. A nightmare to work with because obviously a grade two listed building, but what we got to work with was just stunning architecture that you don't need to do too much to. Actually, you just want to sort of restore it and bring it back to life. But we also built a Barlina in the lower ground floor, which is very beautiful. So there's an old banking vault down there, and we have a long sort of bar counter that people get to sit around, almost like you're in someone's living room. So it's creating that sort of home away from home. But each building is different. You have to react to the neighborhood that you're in. We also do research. Obviously, we've worked with yourself, Katy, to find out, particularly when we went to Manchester, how do we ensure that we're delivering the right product to the right audience, but also, people in London know Lina Stores because it has an 82-year history, and they feel very passionate and strongly about it. If you change anything, you hear about it very quickly if it's not right, and we love that. We love engaging with the community to understand what they'd like to see next. And yeah, I think, as I mentioned, each neighborhood is different. You got to lean into the architecture of the building and ensure that if it's listed like the one in Shoreditch, that you bring that back to life. If it's a newer building, you want to ensure that it's somewhere that you walk into, that it does have that sort of homely feel, and people want to feel comfortable being in there, because Italian food is all about comfort and having something that you recognize, and also having something on the menu that's suitable for whether it's a child that's 2 years old or whether it's your grandma who's 80. There should be something for everyone on the menu.
And there is at Lena Stores, and of course you do have this really rich history, and it's interesting because the first time I ever saw you speak, I think was at a Propel conference, and you sort of gave the history of Lena Stores, and I remember thinking it was one of the best presentations I've ever seen, but actually just the
Thank you.
content of it was fascinating. And we all sit there and sort of listen and watch at conferences to people talking about their brand and the background and the authenticity and everything else. Lena Stores really has it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love the story. It's a love story, which is quite funny. So as a couple, Lina and Enrico, they met each other in Bloomsbury, working in a hospital, and they both emigrated from Italy. In search of a better life. They needed to send money back to their families. And they came together with another family to start this sort of import-export business, which would have been two doors up from the original Brewer Street delicatessen now. I think that sort of wine importation business didn't really work, and they ended up opening the store, which is Lina, and it's Lina Stores, which is actually a slight misspelling from an Italian, so it should be Lina's store, and they called it Lina Stores. So
Right,
it's really funny, but
of
it's really
course.
lovely as well.
Yeah.
And we've had such brilliant customers over the years, so many, whether they're, famous Italians or just, Italians who find it as a home away from home if they need to get that piece of guanciale or something that they can't get in a regular supermarket. They really go there. And even, we're recording this in the run up to Christmas. We'll have
Oh God, yeah.
really unusual Christmas requirements, that people have been coming for years. They might want some, tortellini and brodo. So they'll call up with a couple of weeks in advance and they'll say, I want this many kilos for my Christmas lunch. Can you create it for us? And we don't have that on the menu per se, but they've been getting it for years. So of course we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah. It's just such an authentic story, authentic experience, but yet you've still managed as a business to come across as modern. And
Mm.
I think that that is incredibly tricky to do. How do you keep that authenticity, keep the backstory, keep the purpose and the values, but also move into the modern world of hospitality?
Well, design, I think, is something that we've always adored. It's definitely part of the DNA of Lena. The green and white sort of pistachio
Love it.
stripes
Love it.
was where it all started. And the counter in Brewer Street has this kind of utilitarian style feel. So we tried to lean into that, particularly in the first restaurant, which was a couple of blocks away on Greek Street. And for the first sort of year or so, we were biking across twice a day the pasta in the on very inefficiently Italian style, to be able to serve sort of. It only has 50 seats, so to service that restaurant, it was a real kind of test pilot project. Would we be able to reenact the magic of sort of 70-year-old history at the time,
Yeah.
and bring that restaurant to life? But in terms of design, the biggest challenge was probably the first location because there was so many opinions around the table. We obviously had the family involved. They wanted to, ensure that there was a degree of modernization, but also, we were going to a really old building on Greek Street anyway. How do you sort of encompass that? And actually, what we I hope delivered in the end was something that feels quite timeless and feels like it's been there for generations. And many people do say to us, I cannot believe this restaurant's only 8 years old. It actually feels like it's been there for 30 or 40. And many of the newer restaurants, then they're all very different and all very varied. If you look at the Marleybone location, it reminds me a little bit of sort of Flatiron building in New York, where you're on the corner of Marylebone Lane and Wigmore Street,
Yeah.
and it has gorgeous, floor to ceiling windows, which brings so much natural light. And when that location, when we found it, it was quite poorly designed. You walked in the front door and the stairs was almost taking you straight downstairs. And we thought, oh, that's really unwelcoming, actually. We could never open a restaurant like this because the first thing you see is the stairs to say, oh, we'll come in and welcome, but actually we're sending you to the basement. So at the time, the
Yeah.
basement was quite smelly and odd, but actually we managed to open up that whole space and we wanted to create that kind of communal, homely environment that
Yeah.
I hope you experience if you visit Marylebone as well.
Oh, absolutely. And of course then there's King's Cross as well. I think that was the first one that I went to. How Lena Stores does things, as you say, timeless is a great way to put it. Who else out there do you think is doing a great job? I'm kind of we've accidentally ended up focusing a bit on design in this chat, but actually I'm finding that side of things really interesting because I think that the industry as a whole is putting a lot more onus on design and how the look and feel of a venue is. Who else do you think is out there and doing it really well?
From a simple sort of perspective, I really love what Watch House does with their coffee shop.
Yes.
I think it's very beautifully designed. It almost feels like an Aesop store. It feels
Yes.
something very sort of fashionable about it. And I always feel like it's nice and airy and somewhere that you'd be happy to sit for quite some time. I
Yeah.
passed a coffee store yesterday, and I actually happened to go in and have a coffee because I was drawn in by this beautiful counter on arrival, and I asked the chap behind, and he said, "Oh, this is a store owned by architects." And I said, "Well, you can tell because
Wow.
it's
Okay.
amazing." And it was called Abuelo, which is it was just north of Oxford Circus, but stunning inside. And yeah, enjoyed my lovely coffee there as well. Who else? I love how people can really stay true to the authenticity of their brand. Of course, Dishoom, I think they do segmentation
Mm.
within their restaurant really well. So, I think it's sometimes difficult if you come into a room and the room might be empty on arrival at like at 12 o'clock. But if you
Mm.
segment that room properly, it can always feel like you're not the only one there, and you can always create a little bit of atmosphere.
Yeah.
Um, Beyond that, there's so many doing
Yeah.
good things, right? You just got to kind of keep your finger on the pulse and ensure that you're creating an environment that's interesting for people to come into all the time.
And th I think it's really interesting because I think pubs traditionally have done that very well. That idea of keeping the originality of a building,
Oh, I love a good
but
pub.
also making it cozy and
Mm,
the sort of zoning people in the right places. I think that's really good. But I think that sort of casual dining, high-end dining, etc., have now sort of started to realize that there is some real brand equity in the building itself as much as the actual service and the
absolutely.
offer.
I think people are really looking for an experience when they come to the restaurants. So obviously value for money, great hospitality, but actually the environment that you're sitting in, as well as the good food, is something that you almost shouldn't notice it too much because
Yes.
it has to kind of blend in with your surroundings and has to create that comfort. And if you're almost like spotting it or pointing something out, it's either because it's entirely unusual or because there's something wrong with it, and hopefully the balance is to kind of get that
Yeah.
right, to get that feeling of like I could sit here for hours.
And it's so important to do that because I mean we've done some research at CAM that states I think it's like 96% of people say that they expect whatever hospitality venue they're in to be better than what they have on offer at home. And of
Mm.
course, post pandemic, the average household in the first lockdown of the pandemic, and this is the average household, spent £3,000 on upgrading their living areas. So whether that was a new sofa or a better TV system or a little mini bar, whatever that might be. So we're competing to get people off their brand new sofas with their great sound systems and everything else. So we've got to provide something that is really special and feels special, I think. Feels
100%. I think that that's also important when you're choosing what goes on the menu, right? We often have these conversations about like simplicity around food, but actually people also want to have something on the menu that they can't very easily cook at home. And they love recognizability as well. If I was to just sort of lean into Lina Stores in particular, we took a carbonara off the menu, and we had so much feedback about when is it coming back. And I think it's really because you can't get pancetta of high quality in the average supermarket. And the carbonaras in many other restaurants might not be the traditional version. They might have cream or blasphemy. Um, but,
nice.
uh, but I think it's always important to lean into what the customer wants and to listen to what they say in relation to if they like something. It
Yeah.
shouldn't really have to move. And we try to be innovative, and I think that's important. But there's also staples that must stay because otherwise you're just going to really annoy people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we started the conversation by saying it's that balance between sort of tradition and modernity and etc. So, what is next for White Rabbit projects and also Lena Stores? If you wouldn't mind
Well,
opening one in Brockley in South London, that'd be lovely, by the way.
uh, but yeah, we'll have to think about that one. I don't know if I've ever been to Berkeley. It's like I need to take a trip there. So we've opened the hotel that we mentioned in Lisbon. It's been a resounding success. It's been a lot of work, actually. To open in a new market takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But
Mm.
actually, it's really landed well, and we're very proud of the product and the service and the hospitality being delivered there. Nuno's been a phenomenal partner to have, and the team on the ground are really talented. And Portuguese culture is very much about hospitality as part of their DNA. They're really into family, really into warm welcomes, and the culinary team have done a phenomenal job. So more hotels definitely in the future. Some discussions being had currently. We have a cricket coming up in Covent Garden next year, which is exciting.
Brilliant. Oh, that's really exciting.
Yeah, and also cricket's going to open in the Middle East as well, so that's an exciting time for Rick and Will. And it's we've had some resounding success in their opening in Shoreditch and Canary Wharf, and the Soma bars that they operate are completely phenomenal. If we always our office is opposite the Devonshire, and they're brilliant neighbours to have. The street is absolutely rammed, but actually it's lovely to see outside Soma. There's also a really nice queue, and I think it's become sort of a place to be for a lot of people on the London scene, and I think the team have been able to deliver a really good job there. So yeah, and of course, Lina Stores. We're happy with the locations that we have now. We have 10 different sites. We opened in Manchester earlier on this year. It's been really nice to take Lina Stores outside London for the first time, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and the
yeah.
learnings, yeah, the learnings around like opening regionally, and how you're almost starting from scratch, because we have a lot of customers from the regions, but you also
Yeah,
need to open yourself up to a whole new set of
yeah.
customers. And it's been really lovely to kind of work on all of those local activations and get to know people on the ground. And I love Manchester people anyway. I think
Well, I
they're
was
good
about
fun.
to say,
They're
I
good.
mean, Manchester, it's just,
Yeah.
I've spent quite a bit of time up there, various different hospitality sort of trips. And I remember when the caravan opened up there and I
Mhm.
went up and saw Laura and to see how it was going. And Manchester's just a different beast in
Yeah.
itself. And the people are amazing. And the hospitality community in Manchester is so tight.
It feels very like Ireland to me, because the weather is
Yeah.
very similar. The people are very open and honest and fun. And I feel very much at home there, I have to say. Yeah, the only reason I'm not living in Ireland is because of the weather. So at least I get to go up and down to Manchester a little bit more often, which
Can we expect a Lina Stores in Ireland anytime soon?
you never know. You never know. Sure, sure. Always open to that. And yeah, I think it could do really well in Ireland, actually. I
Yeah,
think the culinary scene there has come on so much in the last few years, and there's some brilliant talent there. We've seen some really great openings from London brands of late, and I think stores could very easily slot in quite nicely.
there you go. You heard it here first. Um, Aideen, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy
Thanks.
speaking to you. Thanks for sharing the plans for the future, and I look forward to seeing you soon, maybe
Yes.
at the KH lunch or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see
Brilliant.
you
Thank you so
soon.
much for your time.
All right. Take care, Katie. Thank you.